Hey guys, and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Season 5 of Diablo 4. Today we're doing our first power rankings, an overview of where things seem to stand in the opening week of Season 5. That basically means how are the classes doing compared to one another at the meta content, at least the initial meta content, which in week 1 is 3 things: your infernal hordes, that new game mode, it's the pit and your ability to farm the tiers, where getting materials is the most effective, like 80+, and finally tormented boss farming, how quick are you at that for the mythic drop simulator. These are the places and the levels we're generally aiming to get our gear that we need and the upgrades we need to hunt from here on. Before I do get into it, please take this all with a grain of salt. I've researched the best I can, I've discussed the topic with those that I can, but obviously things are still very fluid in these opening days. Tomorrow, today even, someone could discover a crazy new build or some kind of hotfix could happen. You don't know what's going to happen, but I hope this gives you at least a general idea to start with, and you know, again, it will change in the coming days. So with that said, let's begin. At the bottom, I'm pretty confidently putting both Necromancer and Druid, so I guess joint fourth. The reason for this is simple. The other 3 classes are currently able to effectively destroy bosses, hordes and pits faster, more effectively, and without nearly as much threat. Where they don't have huge flaws to point out, Druid and Necromancer kind of do right now, so let me explain. Take Necromancer, that's the class that I made. I'm in the opening days and I'm farming out what is likely the best build for the season, Bone Spirit. Bone Spirit demands crazy numbers to function, 100% crit, 275 max resource minimum, and then mythic uniques are extremely advised. That's between Shakos and even Doombringer potentially for the DR. Basically, we're made of paper compared to the other classes. We're seemingly the most squishy. Then our main build is taking time to get the right items to get it functional with its min-max stats. The result is definitely respectable burst, though don't take the footage you're seeing here too seriously. I've been swapping builds a lot. This is actually a no overpower build that I made just to appease some people asking me to make a weaker, cheaper version of Bone Spirit so they could actually run it sooner than they really should. Even here though, I am hitting 50 to 60 million, and in the overpower build, I'm expecting 300 to 400 million hits and higher. Sounds good, right? But the reality is a bit different. I'm slow, I'm made of paper, the explosion radius of Bone Spirit, even with tempers, is so small, and then it's on a cooldown for a few seconds compared to other classes that never stop. Basically, in these early days, the downside of a build like this is heavy, and in the coming weeks, sure, we're going to get stronger, min-max builds are going to show how strong it really is. Right now, it's just not ideal. And that says nothing of the new mode, Hordes, where we're so much worse than other classes, especially with Bone Spirit. Meanwhile, Blood Surge is going to be incredible in there. That's an AoE machine, but its single target damage is way underperforming by comparison for the bosses at the end. So both of our main options right now have serious issues, especially early for Bone Spirit while gearing up. So I would say it's a rough opening week, at least for now, for Necromancers. Meanwhile, take a look at this Druid footage. This was one of the expected best builds from the PTR, Landslide. And as you can see, it's way tankier and way more survivable by comparison. You don't even need to dodge or set up or anything, you get straight into it and just keep going. The Landslide style earthquakes are smashing and moving, which allows them to catch many targets. That's good for boss killing, because you can just ram yourself into the target and do your thing. But in say hordes and so on, AoE is going to be great for batching through chunks of enemies, going to the Aether objectives, clearing those out really quick, where Bone Spirit's very stop and start. This just goes and goes. The issue here is basically just output. While it functions great and it's tanky as hell, it doesn't clear things as quick as the classes. The bosses are going to be a real problem, taking significant time to kill compared to the other classes, really slowing down your runs. That's where I basically poke holes at Druid in this opening week. It's got the AoE, it's got the survivability, but it doesn't have the mobility or the DPS. So with the other 3 classes referenced, let's talk about them. As we look here at Rob2628's showing of Barb, I'm currently placing this at 3rd. This is the Whirlwind Dust Devil setup that we predicted would be really good in the PTR to the season. You maximize the size of your Dust Devils while spinning permanently, hitting as many targets as possible. Of course, it's going to be great in a season that's about dealing AoE damage in the infernal hordes. Despite the Whirlwind concept letting you be mobile while applying your damage though, we see Rob pressing against the wall in a boss fight. That's to trigger Inner Calm for the damage increase that provides, spinning on the still spot for maximum output, which is pretty silly. Overall, what we're looking at here is really insane, impressive DPS, much higher than what we've been looking at otherwise. But the requirements to get this kind of result is insane gear, and that's where Barb often shines. They start a bit slow in the early season, but mid to late season when most people have time to get those ridiculous items, things get really good. So credit to Rob for already achieving 4 mythic uniques in the first week and really good itemization. Obviously, the mass majority of players aren't going to come close to that for some time. So the reality of this output won't be nearly as crazy as what we're seeing here from most people before they get time to grind. Still, the concept is obviously super strong, could prove a challenge for the top builds and the spot for top classes, once we see how things really stand in higher level pits and so on. Now obviously a build like this is going to destroy again in the Hordes, and mob clear can be great for that content, but it's something that would normally struggle against bosses and the huge health pools, especially when you're dealing with less predictable bosses and pesky echo mechanics in the pit. Even Rob with his great setup here showcases the lacking single target by comparison when you don't have that setup and stable conditions. So will Barb find the perfect combo of a build for both single target and AoE by comparison later in the season? Yeah, I'm thinking they probably will. But that brings us to the top spots for Rogue and Sorcerer, who I kind of place joint first and second. They're extremely competitive with one another right now, both crunching bosses faster than anyone else, clearing the highest tiers of everything initially, and shockingly, they're very survivable too. So while being some of the fastest moving classes with some of the best utility for movement, it's just the raw shields and so on that they have that mean they can even just mitigate the dangerous mechanics we have to dodge. So I would say it's really hard to place one fairly above the other right now, but there are ways we could argue for Sorcerer, as I'll say, like the meta build variety. You know, right now Sorcerer has this pile of seriously good options being explored and long-term potential as they scale up, where Rogue is mostly about the Andariel stuff right now, the new version of that mythic unique, key to multiple of their top builds. In the first week, if a mythic unique is going to be key to your best setups, I think it's fair for me to at least bump it back a bit with that in mind. Most people aren't just going to instantly get that mythic unique. If we do consider Rogue first properly then, obviously they're super fast and mobile to dodge what they need to, or just to get to the objective super quick. But it's stuff like their second wind passive that gives you a barrier as you spend energy, which you can temper to increase the potency of, that gives some seriously early defenses. The new unique they have, the Umbercrux Dagger, is another quite exciting one for AoE builds to actually do work against single target. That's the totem you might have been seeing in your parties. They place it down and it soaks damage and spreads it to nearby enemies, or just the boss if it's only a boss. And they've also got some stuff with overperforming crit silliness going on, and then Endariel's is the big hype right now. They're definitely doing great. It's tight between rogues and sorcerers, but to give credit to Sorcerer, they have this just great week 1 power floor. You hit level 100, you farm the right uniques, which is really easy to do in this season, get your basic aspects, and you're more than good to go. You may have been seeing a lot of sorcerers running Fireball as a common effective build to initially use in the open week because of that. Then with the ideal gear and the scaling power of that, things are definitely going to change for Sorcerer. Their ceiling is looking insane this season. Multiple builds that should scale with ridiculous gear and the perfect stats are being discussed and broken down right now. And that's on top of their base great mobility and their obvious really good survivability. So while you could dodge that mechanic with a teleport or whatever, you don't have to because they can just shield it. It's pretty damn nice. So between Rogue and Sorcerer, I'm thinking I'd put Sorcerer above in initial week terms. But for now, that's going to be my initial rankings based on everything I could consider, research, and discuss. Like I said, do take it with a grain of salt. Things are absolutely going to change in the coming days and weeks. But right now, I'm just going to put Necromancer and Druid at the bottom, Barb in the middle, and Rogue and Sorcerer at the top. Let's now see how things change as we get settled in the season. Until next time though, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.